get your chance. Important thing is when it comes, you gotta grab it with both hands and hold on tight.
Welcome to our Part 2 video covering The Last Starfighter. If you haven't seen our behind-the-scenes coverage, that will be in Part 1. Otherwise, let's continue. Sometimes, a movie is released that perfectly reflects the time it came out. In the early and mid-'80s, moviegoers were shown magical images, where people stared in wonder within films like E.T., Raiders of the Lost Ark, and even horror films like Poltergeist. It was a time where people were encouraged to be proud Americans, and pop culture music was usually positive and upbeat. The images of that time, at least in my experiences, was looking up at the stars and dreaming that things were possible. And all of us, no matter what we thought or looked like, could reach that level. And that wonder and possibility were the messages of films I grew up watching. And The Last Starfighter encapsulated that. It is not the greatest film of all time, but it is a great movie representing its time.
Listen, Centauri, I'm not any of those guys. I'm a kid from a trailer park.
If that's what you think, then that's all you'll ever be.
So, why do I think The Last Starfighter is so beloved? Well, there are a lot of elements to this, but the first is that I think it's more accessible to people. Though this film is a basic hero's journey, it is more obtainable for audiences to believe, both today and back then, especially to the kids who see it. Because Alex's superpower is just being good at a video game, and that is why he becomes a starfighter. He doesn't need to be bit by a spider, or have the Force, or carry a ring, or be a mutant to be a hero. He is just an average kid, and like the rest of us, through practice or grace, we could obtain the same results that this character did if we had the same fortitude. Now, when the movie started, Nick Castle originally wanted Rylos to replace Earth when the Universal logo appeared, so that after the logo disappeared, the camera would pull away from the planet. But Universal nixed the idea. Now, the Last Starfighter game itself was designed by Ron Cobb. He tried to make it look a little more futuristic than 1984 games. Though it is a bit dated today, the colors of the game consist of violets and purples, which happen to be the colors of the planet Rylos. The inhabitants of the trailer park don't get much screen time, but we do get some information about them in the movie. The book gives a lot of details about them individually. It even goes so far as to explain what their old careers were, but these insights don't really add much detail to the story. The most defined character beyond the main cast is Otis and his dog, Mr. President. Otis is a veteran of a foreign war. He runs the local shop. His dog, Mr. President, is noted to be very wary of Lewis because he has a habit of shooting things with his Nerf guns. We get a hint of this in the movie, but not much else. Now, it is true that Wil Wheaton was cast for this film, and some have trouble finding him in this movie. At the time of filming, Wil was around 11 years old, and this was 2 years before he would be in Stand By Me. Some say that Wil is this kid, wearing the red t-shirt in the beginning. He could be, I don't know, but for an 11-year-old, he towers over the other kids. Wheaton was fairly tall in comparison to his castmates in Stand By Me, but I'm not going to state for sure he is this kid who towered over others 2 years before that film. Near the end of the film, he is definitely visible, and I will point it out. As for this scene, You'll have to decide for yourself if you think it's him. As for Wheaton's scenes, he said they were cut from the movie before they were even filmed. My scenes were cut from the movie before we filmed them, but I was already in the background of several scenes as one of the kids who lived in the trailer park, so I ended up in the credits. Every year, I get $100 or so in residuals. Now notice the sign on the side of the Rogan trailer. Alex's mother and father were managers of the trailer park complex. And after he died, she inherited his jobs, and to increase the family's income to keep going. This is why Alex is always doing chores around the trailer park, which are skills he learned from his dad, and now he is the only one besides his mom that knows how to do most of them. So essentially, he is trapped by design and uses his skills to help his mother manage the place. The book states that his mother outright owns the park as well. Now, Lewis was named after Nick Castle's son. Jack Blake is the rich kid of the community, and as we said in our previous video, he was one of the runner-ups to play Alex Rogan. Blake has everything handed to him, and with that comes freeloaders and popularity. If you notice one of the ladies in the truck, it's because it is Suzanne Snyder from Weird Science. Now, one of the things I want you to notice is that Maggie is a great supporter of Alex, and she values his presence because if she didn't, she would have reported to Alex that Elvira's electricity is out.
Elvira's got no electric. She can't see her soap, she'll hyperventilate.
Instead of telling Alex about the situation, she tries to sneak him away.
Come on, Alex, they're here!
And they might have got away scot-free. But alas, Alex's mother saw him, and you can see her disappointment that he learned this information even though she knew everyone was looking for him. She even offers to sacrifice her own day to remain with him, and that gesture alone makes her a pretty great girlfriend.
You better just go ahead with Allie.
No, Alex, I'll stay.
No, that's okay. This will take a while. I'll catch up with you later.
Alex.
When the long day is over, notice Alex's room is filled with posters of everywhere he wishes he could be except the trailer park. He has got the place so down that when his neighbors are talking outside his window, you can see Alex mimicking their conversation.
Yep, gonna be pleasant tomorrow, too.
When Alex is doing the big score on his game, it would be nice if everyone made a big deal about such things. As most of us know, the world would probably care less. Then again, this trailer park where they live is so boring, maybe it would be the highlight of their week or month. I guess this depends on how you look at it. We get some more character moments between Alex and Maggie, and by now these characters are fairly established about what they want and what they feel, and now they are both going to go off and have their own adventures. Maggie with Beta and Alex as a starfighter. It's a very streamlined story and quite effective. Now, in the book, when Centauri arrives, Alex thinks he's going to win a prize, and this is one of the reasons he goes into the car. Of course, he does win a prize, just not the one he thinks. There was alternate dialogue filmed for this movie, but it was altered, much for the better, in my opinion.
Who are you?
I'm Centauri, and you may... No, you must trust me implicitly. Get in.
When Centauri takes him to the base, it is Maggie Adelson who plays the alien guide. She was the wife of producer Gary Adelson. In the novel, it would explain that his translator transcribes the sense of what others say, rather than executing a literal transcription. This is almost word for word as the book describes it. Now, the alien races of starfighters are hard to make out, but we thought it would be fun to take a look at the races. There was also a deleted scene at the end of the movie that would have these races return, but it was cut. The friendly alien that talks with Alex is a Maio? Oh, I don't care how it's pronounced. The tentacle creature that Alex steps on is a Bogatti. In the scene where the starfighters put their helmets on, you can barely see its helmet, but here's a picture so you can see what it looked like in the helmet. The worm-faced alien near the Bogatti is called a Well, Leinuzh. Yep, that's what it is. You read it, you pronounce it. In the front row, on the left side, is the short Audreyrian, complete with a one-eyed stalk. Now, a funny-named alien with a blue face was called a Blue Dude. Love that name. How simple. The Starleague itself has been described by the makers of the film in various interviews and the novel as an organization that includes many worlds. But after growing too big, they ceased all expansion as they felt that further growth would result in the organization being too big to govern. So they sealed off their borders with the frontier and lived their lives in peace, while outer systems coveted their utopia. Impervious to all others, the Starleague's biggest problems were those citizens and leaders that coveted more power and status, thus willing to betray the Starleague to gain more. This brings us to Xur and his acolytes who want to overthrow Rylos. The introduction of Xur had a different sequence when the spy was revealed. Originally, the spy's head was put in a contraption where it would be crushed, and you can see the on-set photos above. They decided to go with the melting head scene instead, and that's most likely for the best. Xur is the son of Ambassador Enduran. According to the novel, Xur was on the Council of Rylos, and he tried to seize control of the council in an attempt to become a dictator, but he was thwarted and kicked out. Xur found allies with the Kodan, and he even preached that his father was xenophobic, and that this blinded the council and his father as leaders. Though Xur failed, there are many that continue to follow him and believe that the council and leaders are in the wrong because they exclude other races that are not in the Starleague and ousted Xur, who only wants to improve the Starleague. Though Xur claims the League is xenophobic, the Council continues to maintain the frontier because they cite the facts that the Kodan were the reason the League's ancestors built the frontier in the first place. Thus, Xur is also trying to convince his people to ignore their history and their leader's direction at the same time. Xur is perfect for the Kodan because being on the council, he knew every secret, and therefore knew where the only secret base for the Gunstars were. Since they were confident of their frontier, they did not have a trained army. Their secret base was the only defense beyond the frontier. Xur would take it out in one swipe. Now, the character of Grig was originally to be a tough staff sergeant who shows Alex the ropes, but after O'Herlihy took the part, he inhabited the character and the performance changed drastically into a more fun and gentle character.
And no, I did not use the Excalibur test. It was called a video game.
The Excalibur test is a direct reference to the Arthurian legend, to which the movie structure is relative to. Instead of Arthur pulling a sword from a stone, it is Alex playing a game to become the great warrior. When on the Kodan ship, the members of the bridge crew, besides the commanders, are literally plugged into the craft. And you can see in this picture the analogy of people being plugged into a circuit board. Thus it ties to Alex playing a game on Earth is similar to what he fights in space. Now, Castle specifically stated that the Kodan were pretty dumb, and because of this, they need someone smart to help them lead, and that is one of the reasons Xur is allowed to be there, since they need all the help they can get. This is why their ships work as one, because many of the pilots are not the brightest to work by themselves. The Kodan are also dressed in black and red to denote a demonic sense, and it is stated in the DVD commentary that their faces were designed to be harsh to keep them with the theme. The scene where Lewis looks at the Playboy is real. Yes, he is looking at the real thing, and when the scene occurred, Nick Castle called him over for direction.
But I remember going on the set, and we're in that the bedroom scene, and Nick says, "Hey, come on over here. Okay, so you're going to be going through the chest here, and you're gonna pull out these Playboys here, and then you're gonna open it up." And he opens up the centerfold there, and I'm like, this. And Nick's like, "Oh, don't worry, you've seen that before." And in my mind, I'm like, No, I haven't. You know, hello, puberty.
As we said in our previous video, there were many reshoots with the character Beta. Most of the scenes with Beta have Lance in a wig because he had short hair for another project that he was working on. Some of the reshot scenes included is the scene where Maggie visits the morphing robot when Lewis wakes up with him repairing his head and where he laughs during the truck drive. The character of Beta was described by Lance as completely oblivious to everything and is just trying to figure things out. A perfect example of this is that he has no idea what hair is, and therefore, whenever you see Beta on screen, his hair is a mess because he doesn't even know what a comb or brush is, or what to even do with his hair. It's perfect. I just love Mark Lamo. He's been in so many movies, and of course, Gul Dukat. He is such a fun cameo in this movie. However, it is abruptly stopped by the video game, and we need to note that the game itself has a sense of artificial intelligence, as noted by the makers of the film.
He's exposed. He's exposed by the machine itself. Machine gets a lot of work here.
Yes. Well, Machine's a good guy, too.
Yeah.
Earlier in the film, it sends out homing signals to Centauri, and it even tries to warn Alex as he approaches the area where the Zandozan is.
Where are you? Come on, where are you? Centauri.
As far as how the Zandozan found Alex on such a big planet, the Kodan tracked Centauri's craft as it escaped the base to Earth. They homed in on the area where Centauri deposited his passenger. When Centauri returns to the Starfighter base, notice there are medtechs dealing with wounded. They are a blink and you miss it moment, but here are some pictures of that deleted footage. Grig would then lead Alex away from the area, and Alex would tell him about the Zandozan on the planet. There is also a gas man that is very hard to make out earlier in the film. This character can be seen when Centauri first brings Alex to the base, probably annoyed that he's stuck filling gas tanks of arriving vehicles. Just before Alex boards the Gunstar, you can see a digital shot where they tried to depict him standing on the platform. I never noticed it for some time, which I guess means the shot worked for me. Griggs' job as a navigator and systems operator is to run the ship during combat. The ship is described as pretty much self-guiding, and the navigator can tweak the movements of the ship and do all maintenance that's required, thus freeing the Starfighter to fight. During the truck drive, you can see Suzanne Snyder from Weird Science again. The credits state she is a local cheerleader, and that's pretty much it to her character. When Grig shows the picture of his wife, it is actually O'Herlihy who is in the picture. The costume is still Grig, but with woman's clothing on it. During the scenes with the celebration of Rylos, notice that most of the background is completely black. This is because it was one of the final scenes filmed for the movie, and they had little money for sets or production value. Thus the set was blacked out. This scene would have been after an awards ceremony scene, much like the ending of Star Wars, but it was considered too similar, and so they changed it. At the end of the film, Wil Wheaton is claimed to be the boy in the blue jersey with the red shirt from the beginning. However, others say this kid is Wil Wheaton. At the end of the film, you can definitely see Wil Wheaton by Granny. She is holding a gun as they approach the ship. As to whether Wheaton is this kid or this kid, well, you gotta decide for yourself. When Alex was lowered from the ship, the only set piece was a recycled Starfighter leg that was used when he arrived at the Starleague hangar. The rest of the set was a simple rig, as you can see here. The score by Craig Safan is the true magic of this film. If you think of this film, you can probably hum the theme just as you could for Star Wars or an indie film. Safan was a perfect choice, and he really captured the essence of this movie's approach. After The Last Starfighter came out, it quickly disappeared from cinemas, but when it was released on VHS on November 15th, 1984, the film found its following. The movie became a big success on video, and it was considered a cult classic in no time. And year by year, the following grew bigger and bigger. I was one of those who never knew this film existed. When the film came out, it had no noise and advertisements in comparison to Purple Rain, Gremlins, Conan, or Ghostbusters. I was 12 and living in West Point, New York for the first time, and all my time was spent discovering this wonderful locale, collecting G.I. Joe figures, which were all the rage at the time, and enjoying the summer. The only movie I would see in theaters that summer was Ghostbusters, and the rest I would see on HBO. Thanks to Universal's lack of zeal for the film, it had little presence, so I didn't even know it existed. And I was a sci-fi junkie. If I knew there was a space movie with a kid playing video games, I would have definitely went out of my way to see it. I would not see Starfighter until 1986 at Grove School, as every weekend they would play movies for the school kids, and one of the kids at the school claimed to be Nick Castle's son. The movie took me completely by surprise, and I loved it. In fact, when I started my VHS collection in high school during the late 80s, I made sure I had a copy of this one. I was amazed at how easy I could relate to the down-to-earth characters, especially Alex. And even though the effects were different, I thought the film was inspiring. Today, I don't look at it much differently. It is a usual yearly view for me, and it takes me back to when I was young and dreamed of going places. It really is a beautiful and charming movie, and a must-see for sci-fi fans. As for a follow-up to the film, in 2004, a Broadway stage musical was released in October, but nothing since. In 2008, GPA Entertainment stated The Last Starfighter was on their list to make, but 2 months later, it was announced the film was stuck in pre-production. The screen rights to this property was a real problem for making a sequel. This is around the time when Seth Rogen was interested in remaking The Last Starfighter and tried to get the rights, but he failed to do so, as there were a minefield of issues. Apparently, Universal owns the theatrical and home media distribution rights, while Warner Brothers has international distribution rights after they bought Lorimar Pictures. Universal has remake rights, while the original writer, Jonathan Betuel, has sequel rights. In desperation, Seth Rogen tweeted out that he even tried to get Steven Spielberg to acquire the rights for him. Spielberg, despite his power, could not even get the rights as well. Rogen stated that he has absolutely no interest in anything happening with the film. Despite this claim, there was interest because on April 23, 2015, at an Egyptian theater panel, Nick Castle said this.
He and I wrote a screenplay. I helped develop it, a sequel, as you're suggesting, where these lovely people would still be on board as the parents of the next generation of starfighters. And we had finished the screenplay. We had found a studio. We actually did all the storyboards for it. I worked with a storyboard artist, and then it fell apart.
In July 2015, there were rumors that a television series called The Starfighter Chronicles was to be released through Surreal TV. Andy Vick and Rick Ray, who were linked with Surreal TV, said the project was in its early stages, and they stated the show could be watched on television, but those with virtual reality headsets could break the frame and look around the scene's environments in all directions. Jonathan Betuel confirmed that this was in the works during a July 15, 2015 IndieWire interview when he said, "The TV show will exclusively focus on the alien law enforcement, and the use of virtual reality will play a big role." Needless to say, this didn't work out either. After this period, there was a lot of court issues with the rights. Later, in October 20th, 2020, Betuel backtracked about the project and stated that the entire television premise was premature, stating that Starfighter 2 was intended to be a movie. "I didn't generate that. That was a misfire from a wishful TV producer at the time. This is a movie with all the bells and whistles, and it won't presuppose that you've seen the original film. There'll be references here and there, but it'll carry forward the saga." During October 2020, new talks emerged that Betuel was working on a script for the film, and it involved a Star Wars writer named Gary Whitta. It looks like we'll be making the deal to get it going. Gary's a gifted collaborator. We'll be writing the script together, but it's taken a long time. I had to go through a process that took years to recapture the rights, but that was recently completed, and although nothing is ever clear sailing, it looks like we have a really good opportunity now. So I'm really looking forward to taking it up. Gary Whitta wrote Rogue One and Star Wars Rebels. The project was described as a reboot and sequel that passes the torch to a new generation. The film's working title was The Last Starfighters. Even some concept art was leaked by lead concept artist Matt Alsop. The leads are now parents, and time has passed. It's not a remake. It's going to continue the story. What's changed is time itself. Certainly, as the video world and the alien world have continued to tick away, it's not a time capsule of the 80s by any means. We're taking it to the next level, passing the torch or the joystick. In 2021, Gary Whitta kind of dampened the possible excitement by saying, "There's a decent chance it never happens, but if it doesn't, it won't be for the lack of effort on my and John's part." For a film like Starfighter to return, we have to be honest that it would require a big budget from a big studio. And like Gremlins, it's a commodity from over 30 years ago. And the first questions from studios would be, how much? And will anyone under 20 care to see a sequel or remake? The thing holding a return of this film back is most likely one of those questions. What is going for a sequel is that the original cast wants to do it. The director wants to do it, and the writer wants to do it, and he has main ownership over sequel rights. And what is better is that they are all still close to each other. One can never know what the future holds, and we can all take a lesson from this movie and have a little optimism that the film won't be trapped in limbo forever, just like Alex thought he would be trapped in his trailer park all those years ago. With that, we have come to the end of our Last Starfighter coverage. Next up is the precursor to the Last Starfighter, Tron. Maybe I should have done Tron first, but there's no crying over the spilt milk now.
What? Spilt milk?
We will see you next time. If you like what you see here, click like and subscribe. Super thanks helps a bunch. Sharing helps a lot too.